Mayor Andy Berke asked 5 people, including a minister, an artist, and the CEO of Techtown, and 2 former prosecutors, Bill Cox, a county state prosecutor, and Bill Killian, a Yankee prosecutor, to come up with 3 names from a candidate field of 49 applicants for chief of police. And this body, according to the reports in the press that simply restated the press release from the committee, came up with 3, including 2 officers in Chattanooga, Edwin McPherson, one, and David Roddy, the other. And then the third candidate is a man named Todd Chamberlain. And it's interesting how the story, even in the Times Free Press, is almost identical to that in the Chattanoogan, and that one posted by TB3, WRCB TV, giving effectively the summary as given by the committee. Not really enough time to do solid background work on these candidates, but the one from Los Angeles has been 33 years in the enforcement of laws as against the people of Los Angeles County, and was involved, according to this summary, in patrol, gang enforcement, use of force investigations, which is to say the whitewash that often happens when police abuse someone, counterterrorism, and SWAT. SWAT, of course, is the military, the strong, toothy military part of policing. It says that he ascended in the ranks of the LAPD and has 1,800 officers in his command. He is a commander, so that's his military title and his military status in that city. The story says that the panel says he serves as the homeless coordinator for the entire LAPD. Now, that's odd language, as if the LAPD had a diaconal mission to coordinate the doings and the care of the homeless, which really it doesn't. But that's what we're told here. That he is a coordinator where he has developed new systems, partnerships, and protocols for serving the homeless population of Los Angeles. That's like saying that police officers here in Chattanooga serve you, my listener. There are 486 sworn officers, we're told in the story. The version I'm looking at is that put out by WRCB. 486 sworn officers and 100 non-sworn employees of the department. So they're serving the homeless, as we're told about Todd Chamberlain. And the idea, of course, is that police serve the public. They are servants of the public, but they are, as if they were peacekeepers, and they are that. A cop is a citizen on patrol in the older order of things, and that is the origin. But cops have been professionalized and effectively nationalized. They rose in prominence with the rise of the nation state, and I would say they're unraveling today, thanks to social media, is part of the decline of the nation state. So we want to see more liberty in the future, less violence, less state violence in the future. Now, the 2 local men are Edwin McPherson and David Roddy. You can go online to read those stories. That there are descriptions about them. One is black, and one is white. In the media business and being a pundit, we're expected to have opinions on everything. And I remember when there was a race for criminal court judge. That was the race went to Tom Greenholz. There were 2. There were candidates for that office, and I remember saying I instinctively favor the man who worked as the defense attorney in the public defender's office, Mike Little, as opposed to the rival that worked in the prosecutor's office. And you said, well, how don't you want to look at the character? Don't you want to look at the legal background? Don't you want to look at certifications and the like? And I said, well, no, not really, because those are details. The question is, who is more likely to favor the citizenry and justice as opposed to the state? Now, you say, well, why would you put it that way? That just seems so unfair. Why would a judge who's a prosecutor favor the state? Well, because his whole lifelong task as a prosecutor is to represent the state. He represents the state, the state, the state, and the accused are always, of course, the citizens, right? They're always the citizens. And so by my thinking at the time was that the prosecutor will have a prejudice in favor of the state. He will tend to favor the state by habit, by custom, by affinity with his former colleagues in that office, the public prosecutor's office, a state office. A defense attorney, whether he was in private practice or in the public defender's office, has a predisposition the other way. He has a predisposition for the defendant. Now, a public defender is like the prosecutor, a state actor. And in fact, public defenders allow the fact that we have that system paid for by the taxpayer allows the enforcement of laws to run at a very high speed. If we didn't have public defenders whose job is to run the plea bargain mill with the prosecutor, there might be more trials. Of course, there'll be much more manifest injustice. But the injustice now is that the public defender lets the mill run at a very high speed, and prosecution by starting with the cops. Right, the cops are the prosecutor's arms. They represent the prosecution, they represent the state, and they represent commercial government, which by definition is hostile to liberty. By definition, police are hostile to liberty per se, just in the basic function of their calling. Their job is at enmity with liberty, constitutionally guaranteed, God-given liberty. By definition, their enforcement is in commerce and against the rights of the people. So you see why I can say it's okay to have what we could effectively call a prejudice in the judicial arena in the candidates for judge, a predispositional favor for the candidate who's the defense attorney rather than the prosecutor. Okay, so here the same I say all that just to highlight the fact that there's a kind of analytical presupposition operating here too with candidate for the chief of police, and the presupposition would be that you want someone, even though you want reform, and you're more likely to get reform from one brought in from another place than to find it in a man who's already in the system as it is now, right? So since we're not sure about Todd Chamberlain from LAPD, I would say no to him based on what little we have printed here in the press. No to him because he has a kind of military background. He's a SWAT guy, and he's involved in use of force investigations, which tend to favor the police. Those are generally whitewashes, and they highlight the qualified immunity that law gives to policemen. Policemen can do all kinds of abusive things that private people would be found to would be tortious conduct by a private party. In other words, evils and wrongs that would be privately suable can be done with impunity by the police. And that is because they have a special privilege, a special ranking and favor in Tennessee law. The police can execute people, summarily execute people. City employees have executed people many times. The most recent one was last August. Officer McPherson executing in summary, extrajudicial fashion, Todd Browning, the plumber, the mad and angry plumber at the side of his house. So they have that special privilege. So here now we have these candidates. We have Edwin McPherson, of whom I heard someone speak highly, and we also have David Roddy, who's the acting chief. He is the chief of staff, and he's the acting chief for now. Now the question that we want to ask, since we are concerned about saving innocent American lives, the prospect of reform, I would simply say that it's too early to tell about that. The claims of reform are about 2 or 3 years old since the major upset by police in killing people. We have about 1,000 Americans slain every year by the police. Police are many times more likely to take your life, my listener, than a Muslim terrorist. So when you hear about the threats of Muslim terrorism, they are hugely overplayed. And I would say that is part of the deep state propaganda to maintain, for its parties to maintain hegemony, to maintain control of the national apparatus. That is part of the operating narrative. It's 40 or 50 years old already. And we're supposed to think that we have to be secure. We have to have security first. We give the state the duty of security. Okay, that's the main. I think it's a theological problem, not that we don't understand what God gives as the role of the state. The state is a ministry of mercy, a ministry of the sword. The church and the family are ministries of mercy. The state has a sword, and that sword is to be served in the interest of justice, not security. The state does not have, before God, the duty of security. That belongs to the individual and to the family. And so to expect the state to provide security means that you have to expect and want and covet and favor and vote for the total state. That simply, you can't avoid the total state. You can't avoid the police state. The police state is the fruit of the desire for security to be provided not by yourself and your kind, but the state. David Tulis, caller, you're live on the air. What's on your mind?
I'm going to disagree with you, and I think you should open the phone lines to get opinions, because you're thinking all cops are out there to kill people. They're not. Matter of fact, I talked to a woman that thanked the cops because there was some creep that shot 6 people, and the policeman in there and got them out of their neighborhood. You're not a black woman with little children in the bad part of Chattanooga that can't have their kids outside because there's over 200 gangs. And being little wussies, and I mean, what is this reform? The police shouldn't be involved in reform. That's not their damn job. Their job is to catch the bad guy and throw him in jail, and the job of the judge is to keep him in jail. Not to reform, not to deliver pizza or donuts, not to be social networkers. We hire the police to catch bad guys.
Okay, we hire the police to catch bad guys. If you have something to say about this matter, do call 800-8949, 800-8949. But the reform question is on the table because I put it there. Okay, David Tulis here, your host at Nooga Radio. I have put reform on the table, and the expectation that you have, my listener, is that we need to have someone as chief of police, if we're having police at all, and that person needs to care about the life and the liberty of the people. He needs to put the people first. He should have a respect for life. He should understand that all life is made in God's image, and that neither he nor other agents of Andy Berke, the mayor, have the authority to take life. They should make every effort to avoid the needless taking of life. And when I say needless, I'm talking about the way officers view their jobs. They are very quick to resort to violence. They're very quick to resort to barking commands. And if you don't command, if you don't obey, if you don't lie on the floor with your neck on the ground, lie on the street with your neck on the ground, you're going to get tased, you're going to get shot. That we see the videos over and over again from all around the country. We have the Javerio Eagle killing last year as witness. A fusillade of bullets for a man who was not in his right mind, who was unstable, and who was provoked by being surrounded by a military operation with him and his daughter, and he was just gunned down. And even as he was dying of about 8 or 9 bullet wounds on the grass, he was handcuffed. That's normal procedure. Handcuff a man who's dying, and then say how you feel. that is how it was. And the officers who shot him, they all got psychological counseling, and they were protected by the provisions of the policy Chief Fletcher wrote about in his operations manual. You can read about that at Nooganomics.com. We covered that policy at Nooganomics.com. Our chief sponsor here at Nooga Radio, David Tulis, the David Tulis Show. Well, reform requires the officer, by new training, that focuses on negotiation and talk, and the use of time, cover, and space, and de-escalation. Those 4 things. Those are the elements of reform. The use of time, cover, space, and de-escalation. Now, what happens in the McPherson execution? McPherson didn't have to kill the plumber. He didn't have to do it. He could have just backed his car up, gone to the back to the stop sign, and waited for somebody else to come. Someone who was not going. He was not there by himself. There were other officers in East Ridge, but it all had to happen right then. And he said, he screamed at him, don't touch the tarmac. Don't touch the tarmac. And so this officer shot a man whose arms were at his side because he crossed the line. That whole crossing the line, the kill zone theory, these are all old school legacy systems where the life of the individual matters nothing. And 1/4 of the people in the jail today, Chief Hammond tells me, are people with mental problems. And so that means that probably that many or more on the street who encounter the officers who end up being killed are people who have a mental disturbance of some kind. They're on medication, they're off their medication, they're angry, they're being irrational, they've had bad things happen in their lives, they're not thinking reasonably, they're not thinking in terms of self-preservation, they're not rational, and so they end up being beaten or killed. And reform says we respect the citizenry, we're here to protect the citizen, even if someone who's not really looking out for his own interest. We're here, we don't want to kill him, we don't want to beat him, we don't want to tase him, we want to convince him to drop the knife. Do you have to kill a man who's raising a knife at you? Well, if you got body armor on and you're a trained cop, he's not going to hurt you, okay? Even if he lunges at you, you don't have to kill him. You can just take the blow, parry the blow, right? Parry the thrust. It may be more dangerous, but I would say that the officer needs to think about why he became an officer in the first place. And he needs to think in terms of self-sacrifice. We often hear, when we hear about a dead officer, a slain officer, that he gave the ultimate sacrifice. Well, most officers are unwilling to make any kind of sacrifice at all. The goal of the shift is get home alive, get back to your family alive. And anything that threatens that should be neutralized and even exterminated. Take care of the problem, make sure you get home safely. Well, if you're an officer and you really care about the public weal, the public good, should not there be a different assessment? Should not there be a willingness, if a mistake is made, to die rather than to kill, right? If a mistake, there's a mistake on what the man has in his hand, okay? Let's say there's a situation that the training video, the training game presents you. A man turns around and there's something in his hand. Is it a gun? If it's a gun and you don't shoot, then the video has you falling dead, okay? If the man turns around suddenly and the thing in his hand is a phone or a billfold and you kill him, well, then there's a lawsuit. Well, the risk should be taken by the officer rather that the officer die in a mistake. Rather, here's the thesis. Rather, the officer be killed in a mistake, the mistake being that he didn't act quickly enough. Rather, the officer die in a mistake than that he kill an innocent person by mistake. You see what I'm saying? The risk should be not on the part of the citizen, but on the part of the officer. The officer, after all, took that job for that very purpose, to defend people, to secure people, to make people safe, to make the city safe, to make the city a better place in which to live, to find malefactors, to find rapists, to determine who is breaking in to poor people's houses and stealing their jewelry and their phones and their television sets, to find murderers who have escaped, right? To find fugitives from justice elsewhere who are in Chattanooga. That's their job. Better that the officer make a mistake and his life be forfeit, rather than that he kill accidentally someone who didn't have a gun, who didn't have a knife, who was really an impotent person making threats. Rather the mistake take the life of the officer than that it take the life of a person, a resident of Chattanooga, a visitor to Chattanooga, an American citizen, a Tennessee citizen, who has done nothing worthy of capital punishment. You see, death should come to a citizen if he has done something worthy of death. That would be a murder, that would be a rape, that would be sodomy. These are, in God's laws anyway, those are capital offenses, not in man's laws, but in terms of what God requires. So if those sins, those crimes are done, and there's a conviction, and there's a death sentence rewarded to that man for his grievous error, well, then that person should die, but not at the hand of an officer on the side of a street, in an intersection, at a tavern, in a parking lot, in a field. Do we shoot people lying on the ground? Do we shoot people whose arms are behind their back? Do we shoot people whose arms are on their sides, as Todd Browning's were back in August in East Ridge, in that little neighborhood? A man with a wife and at least one child. Better the mistake be that the officer gives his life for the innocent than that the innocent, in a mistake, gives his life for the security and safety of the officer, that he gets home safely. Do you see what I'm saying? That's my thesis. That is the reform thesis that we need to talk about. This is the idea of reform: saving American lives, saving the lives of Chattanoogans, and making people secure. That's why we have to have better laws. That's why laws can't be vague, right? We're talking about voidable laws. The Tennessee intent to go armed law is void for vagueness. It is an illegal law. We need to have security. We need to have peace. Bad laws have to be challenged and defied on appeal by brave Christian men, such as Arthur J. Hirsch, whose case is going to be argued a week from today in Nashville. This is reform, and we need to think about, I suggest, having reform at the top of the police department, where there is lethal force carried by nearly 500 people who wear guns and armor, who have multiple clips of ammunition, who have CS spray. CS gas, by the way, is given in the Tennessee statute as an item forbidden. It is forbidden in the Tennessee terrorism statute to have CS spray. So these officers have that, and pepper spray as well. There needs to be the civilian control again on this whole operation. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 12.